When he was young, Caleb once liked a woman. When she got divorced and returned to the country, I was the one he left behind in a heavy rainstorm. That day, I stopped a cleaning lady walking by and borrowed an umbrella from her. After that, I went to the airport and bought the nearest available flight. I thought anywhere was fine, as long as it wasn't a place with Caleb and Madison. At 6 o'clock, Caleb's car arrived home. The one who came out to greet him was the housekeeper, not his wife. I wasn't there. Only then did Caleb remember that because he had been too worried about Madison, he had forgotten to pick me up. But to him, it didn't matter. His wife had a gentle personality and wouldn't get angry over such a small thing. At 7 o'clock, the rain had stopped and the sky was very dark. I still hadn't returned home. Caleb started feeling a little flustered. He called me 3 times. The first time, no one answered. The second time, the third time, he still couldn't reach me. A sudden downpour crashed down again. In just an instant, the sky turned pitch black. I struggled to run to the eaves of a nearby shop to take shelter. Looking at the pouring rain, I felt a bit lost. An hour earlier, Caleb had said he would come pick me up and take me home, but at that moment, he was nowhere to be seen. The girls standing next to me to escape the rain were picked up one after another by their boyfriends or husbands, each carefully tilting an umbrella toward them. I thought that at this moment, Caleb was probably also carefully shielding Madison the same way, the woman he had liked when he was young, but ended up missing his chance with. People said that after she got married, she had suffered a lot. 3 months after the divorce lawsuit began, Madison's mother passed away. Caleb worried so much he couldn't sleep at night, constantly sighing, and today was the day Madison finally completed her divorce and returned to the country. Early in the morning, Caleb showered and cleaned himself up, then changed into his newest suit, pairing it with a mandala-patterned tie. After our marriage, I took care of everything for him, his meals, his clothes, his daily life, but that tie wasn't something I bought. The rain kept falling non-stop, noisy like stir-fried beans, while my heart felt completely still. I smiled and waved at the cleaning lady passing by. "I just bought this seafood. I want to trade it for the old umbrella in your hand," I said. Seeing how delighted she looked, I couldn't help curling my lips into a small smile. The umbrella was very old, but it could still block the wind and rain, better than a slow, unreliable man. I walked out of the market and casually hailed a taxi by the roadside, heading to the airport. Only when I arrived did I realize I had nowhere to go. The only family I had left was my grandmother, but if I went to her, she would know I must have suffered some grievance. In the end, I randomly bought the nearest flight. I thought anywhere was fine, as long as there was no Caleb and no Madison. During the 3 years of my marriage, Madison had quietly seeped into my life like air. I didn't want to endure it anymore. Before boarding the plane, my phone suddenly rang. It was Caleb. I thought for a moment and decided not to answer. After the ringtone stopped, I put his number into my blacklist. Caleb arrived home at 6 o'clock. When the car stopped, only the housekeeper came out to greet him. He paused for a moment. After taking off his coat, he didn't hand it to the housekeeper, but draped it over his arm instead. "Where is Madam?" "Madam hasn't returned yet." Caleb stopped walking. Only then did he remember that I had suddenly wanted to go to the market to buy fresh seafood, and he had said he would pick me up and take me home. But Madison had fainted from crying in front of her mother's grave, and he had rushed her to the hospital, completely forgetting about me. Caleb glanced outside at the rain and felt a bit guilty. Would I be angry? But as soon as that thought appeared, he chuckled and shook his head. He had never met anyone more gentle and forgiving than his wife. I had never gotten angry over something so small. "Sir, you've been caught in the rain," the housekeeper reminded softly. "You should go upstairs and take a hot bath." The housekeeper's reminder snapped Caleb out of it, and he nodded. "If my wife comes back, tell her I'm upstairs," he said. He went upstairs to take a hot shower, but for some reason, even soaking in warm water, he still felt uneasy. When he came out of the bathroom, he felt his nose a little stuffy and wanted to get some cold medicine, but he couldn't find the medicine box anywhere. Caleb looked at the clock. It was almost 7. I still hadn't come home. Outside, the rain seemed to have stopped, and the sky was getting darker. He took out his phone and called me. The ringtone rang for a long time, all the way until it finally cut off, but no one answered. Caleb frowned. This had never happened before. I would never miss his calls. Maybe the heavy rain had caused a traffic jam. Maybe something unexpected had happened on the road. Caleb felt his heart suddenly tighten. He quickly made a second call. Just a moment ago he could still get through, but now the call wouldn't even connect. His brows knit even tighter, his expression darkening, but he still patiently tried a third time. It still wouldn't connect. He stood there for a long time, phone in hand. Then he went online to look it up and realized that when this happened, it usually meant the other side had put your number on their blacklist. Caleb suddenly found it absurd. He really ought to take back what he'd said about never having met anyone more gentle and forgiving than his wife. By the time the plane landed in that strange city, it was already late at night. Once the signal came back, my phone lit up with new notifications. I received a few text messages from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Ivy. This is Madison. I heard you're upset with Caleb because of me and haven't gone home. He's really worried and wants to apologize. I think I should explain a little to you about what's going on between me and Caleb. He did like me in the past, but that was all when we were kids. Caleb has always called me his little sister, and I've always treated him like an older brother. Because of me, there's a rift between the two of you now, and that's really not something I want to see. No one hopes for Caleb's happiness more than I do, Ivy. After you get this message, could you call him back?" I found it ridiculous. If he was worried about my safety, there were countless ways to handle it. Someone like Caleb could pull up my immigration records as easily as flipping a hand. But after I left home, the first person to come looking for me wasn't the police, it was Madison. I was disgusted, terribly sick of this life of mine, where even the slightest rustle of grass in the wind was something Madison would quickly find out about. I didn't reply, but Madison was very persistent. She called me. I tapped to answer. On the other end, there was silence for a moment, then a soft little laugh, followed by Madison's voice. "So you're not as saintly as Caleb says," she drawled. "You've really got patience 3 whole years before you finally start making a fuss, Ivy." She suddenly called my name. "Since you're willing to voluntarily step aside, I'll tell Caleb to give you a little more support money." I laughed. "Miss Madison, you've already been divorced once. A divorce lawsuit is extremely exhausting. You must be very experienced. I'll trouble you with it then. If I get a good settlement, I'll buy you a coffee." As soon as I finished, I hung up directly, then added that number to my blacklist and set it to block all future calls. On the 3rd day after I left home, Caleb called my grandmother, who lived thousands of miles away. After asking about her health, he cautiously tried to bring it up. "Grandma, Ivy mentioned a few days ago that she wanted to come visit you." "There's no need for her to come back. I'm still fine," Grandma replied. "The distance is too far. Don't have her running back and forth." Standing on the large rooftop, where he could see the deep red setting sun, Caleb gripped his phone tightly. His heart sank the same way the sun was slowly sinking. He knew I only had one relative left in this world, my grandmother. So he had always assumed that I must be mad at him and had temporarily gone back to Grandma's house. But I wasn't there. So where had I been these past few days? He turned around and his gaze fell on the familiar dressing table. It was as neat and spotless as ever, just like before, but the comb I used hadn't been put away in time. He walked over and picked it up. A few long strands of hair were still tangled around the teeth. My hair was very black. I had never dyed it. Caleb clenched the comb in his hand, feeling a little dazed, thoughts running deeper and deeper. Madison called a second time, just before Caleb finally snapped out of it. "Earlier, when I walked past your garden, I saw the climbing roses. They've all withered." Madison's gentle voice drifted through the phone. "You should have the gardener clear them out. They look terrible. No need." For the first time, Caleb rejected her outright. Of course, Madison was slightly stunned, but she quickly recovered. "Caleb, are you angry?" "Oh, right. This is your house and Ivy's. The two of you decide things together." Her last words carried a faint sob. Caleb's heart softened again. "That's not what I meant." "There's still no news about Ivy?" Madison asked. "No, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have come back. Madison lowered her head and cried. Hearing those small, broken sobs, Caleb inexplicably felt irritated. I cried very rarely. I only cried once in his arms, on our wedding night, because of the pain. And during the first year of our marriage, when he missed my birthday because Madison's abusive husband had caused trouble, and he rushed overseas overnight out of fear something would happen to her. Caleb felt restless. After 3 years of marriage, he had never known I had a temper, never known I could be this stubborn and difficult. He sat down on the edge of the bed, thinking for a long time before deciding to call my only close friend. My friend sounded surprised. She hadn't received any calls from me. I hadn't gone to the city where she lived either. When Caleb hung up, his hands were trembling slightly. He lit a cigarette but didn't smoke it. I liked cleanliness. When I was home, the entire large house never had the slightest strange smell. His phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number. In the past, Caleb would never answer calls like this, but now, for the first time, he pressed accept. Hello? His voice shook a little. Caleb, it's me, Ivy. The moment he heard my familiar voice, the usually calm and collected, Caleb suddenly spoke sharply. Ivy, you're not a 3-year-old child. Running away from home, is this the kind of childish thing you think you should be doing at your age? Do you know how bad this looks for the Cole family? I'm sorry, I said quietly. Caleb gripped his phone tightly and loosened his tie. He felt as if a heavy stone in his chest had finally been lifted. If you know you're wrong, then come home quickly. His tone softened noticeably. Caleb, I called because there's something else. What is it? I sent you something. By now you should have received it. What did you need to send? Couldn't you give it to me when you got home? Caleb asked, annoyed. I remained calm. I'm not coming home. Just make sure you sign for the delivery. After you read it, if there's no problem, sign your name. I'll call you again in 2 days. This phone isn't mine, I borrowed it. Don't call it again. I won't receive it. Ivy, what do you mean by that? Caleb had barely begun to relax, but instantly tensed up again. Caleb, after 3 years of marriage, I can see that you're not happy. So, let's get divorced. Caleb didn't say anything. I didn't speak either. It felt as though we were both politely waiting for the other to respond. Where are you now? He finally demanded. That doesn't matter. Caleb looked out at the still sunset beyond the window. Ivy, have you lost your mind? I didn't answer. He could only hear the faintest soft laugh, and then I hung up the phone directly. Caleb immediately tried calling back out of instinct, but the person who answered was an unfamiliar older woman speaking a local dialect he didn't understand. He apologized and hung up. The sunset sank over everything as he sat still in its heavy glow, unmoving. 3 years of marriage, I had been like a cup of warm water, always at a steady 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I never got angry. I never raised my voice. Not once. When he spoke so gently and softly all the time, when everyone liked her and praised her, it seemed he had forgotten that our marriage in the first place had only been a burden passed down from the older generation. I had become the Cole family's daughter-in-law, with nothing more than a small debt of gratitude. How could I possibly be as kind and harmless as I appeared, with no hidden thoughts at all? Caleb turned toward the dressing table and set down the comb still in his hand. He looked at himself in the mirror, his brows tightly knitted, anger flickering in his eyes, an emotion he normally never allowed to show. And today, over something this small, he had lost control again and again. Very quickly, Caleb regained his usual expressionless calm. He stepped out of the master bedroom and went downstairs. Madison called him from the living room, and he only responded with a flat, emotionless, yeah. He told the housekeeper to bring today's delivered package. Caleb took the envelope I had sent and opened it. Madison, standing beside him, gasped softly, covering her mouth. Caleb's expression didn't change at all. He tore the divorce agreement into pieces and threw it into the trash. Caleb? Madison stepped closer, lightly tugging on his sleeve, speaking softly. Don't be angry. Ivy must have acted on impulse. She's always been gentle and understanding. Thinking about it, it's still my fault. If I hadn't come back, if I hadn't bothered you, she wouldn't be upset. Caleb's voice turned cold. What does this have to do with you? She's the one being unreasonable. She's unreasonable, that's exactly why you used to love her, isn't it? Madison forced a stiff smile. Even when I was overseas, I heard plenty about your marriage. About the feelings between you two. She hadn't even finished when tears suddenly welled up. Caleb let out a cold laugh. Why do you think I married her in the first place? Others might not know, but don't tell me you didn't. Madison looked at him with wide, watery eyes. Caleb, was it really because of me? Caleb didn't respond. He only gently pulled his sleeve out of her grasp. I have something to take care of. Do you want the driver to take you home, or will you stay here? Madison wiped her tears. I'll wait here for you. You and Ivy fought like this. I wouldn't be able to sleep if I went back. Caleb nodded, instructing the housekeeper to tidy up the guest room downstairs, then told the driver to prepare the car before immediately turning and walking out. Madison watched him leave the villa, then slowly shifted her gaze to the torn-up divorce papers in the trash. She pressed her lips together and sat down on the sofa. Why had Caleb ripped up the divorce agreement? It seemed he had no intention of divorcing Ivy at all. I knew that the moment I left, Caleb could find someone's whereabouts as easily as flipping a hand if he wanted to. So when I saw Caleb standing downstairs at the apartment building, I wasn't surprised. In the early autumn weather, he wore a thin light gray coat, leaning against his car as he smoked. He was handsome, tall, effortlessly eye-catching in every movement. Next to him, I looked painfully ordinary. An oversized cotton dress, my long hair tied up with a handkerchief, no makeup, holding grocery bags from the supermarket. I looked more like the old housekeeper from the Cole household than a wife returning home. When we first got married, I often felt insecure and inferior. But today, I had long since thought everything through. A simple stir-fry dish could never appear on the table of a grand banquet. From the beginning, Caleb and I were already wrong. He crushed the cigarette and looked at me with a neutral expression. I set my shopping bags down. Caleb lifted his wrist and checked the time. When he spoke, his voice was as cold as ever. Go pack your things. 30 minutes should be enough. Did you sign it yet? I reached my hand toward him. Give me the divorce agreement. I'll go back with you and finish the procedures. Caleb's dazed eyes still showed no emotion, only a deeper, unreadable darkness. Right now isn't a good time to announce our divorce to the public, he said calmly. Then we won't announce it, I replied. As long as we complete the procedures, that's enough. Ivy, you know next week is the company's 1-year anniversary. You need to attend it with me. Caleb lifted the corner of his mouth, the faint smile carrying clear sarcasm. You picked the perfect time to make trouble. But you should know something. I'm not the type to let someone else control me. I didn't say anything. I simply looked at him quietly. We had done the most intimate things a husband and wife could do, but a man can separate sex from love. A woman can't. That rainstorm hadn't soaked my body, but it had drenched my heart. Caleb would never understand, because he had never loved me. If you sign the divorce papers, next week I will attend the anniversary event with you, I said. If you need my cooperation in front of others, I can do that. I even smiled gently at him, just like before. Caleb, this will only be good for you. There's nothing bad about it. He stared at me for a long moment before finally nodding. After the company anniversary ends next week, I'll sign it. I didn't return home with Caleb. It wasn't until the day before the company's anniversary event that I flew back to Beijing. To avoid attracting attention and giving gossip reporters something to twist into rumors about our divorce, Caleb came to pick me up at the airport himself. When I stepped out of the car at the mansion, Madison rushed out to greet me like the lady of the house. Ivy, you're back. She quickly walked up and grabbed my hand, her eyes red with tears. I looked at her calmly. Her clothes, jewelry, makeup, everything had been meticulously chosen. It was that effortless, elegant luxury that wealthy socialites wore to host guests in their private homes. I said nothing. I simply pulled my hand away. Madison's nails were beautifully manicured. Her fingers pale and smooth, adorned with a gemstone ring and a diamond ring. On my hand, there was nothing. I had taken off my wedding ring long ago. In fact, I'd even developed a small callus on my palm. When I first learned of Madison's existence, I was foolish enough to compare myself to her. But now, no matter how beautiful or graceful she was, there wasn't even the slightest ripple in my heart. I no longer looked at her and didn't respond. I just picked up my bag and walked past her. Madison bit her lip in embarrassment. Only then did one of the housemaids hurry out to greet me. "Madam, please let me carry that for you." I smiled and stepped aside. "No need." The housemaid didn't dare insist and looked helplessly toward Caleb. "Let her be," Caleb said. Then he withdrew his gaze and walked toward the main house. But I had no intention of returning to the main house with him. Instead, I walked toward the guest residence used to receive visitors. Finally, Caleb lost his temper. Perhaps because I did this in front of so many servants, I had truly embarrassed him. And Madison. I didn't stop walking. I didn't respond. I had absolutely no desire to communicate with Caleb today. All I wanted was for the anniversary event to end smoothly so that this marriage could end quickly too. When Caleb and I walked hand in hand into the banquet hall, the atmosphere immediately rose to its peak. He acted like the thoughtful, attentive husband. And I, as always, played the gentle, gracious wife everyone praised. When speaking with others, he and I kept our fingers interlaced intimately. Occasionally, he would lean his head toward me, casting me a soft look. I would lower my head and smile back. But in the past, that smile had come from genuine shyness and happiness. Tonight, it was only a mask. I hated myself for it, and I despised him too. I only hoped the banquet would end a little faster, but near the end, someone placed a whole live fish in front of me. The faint smell of it hit my nose, and my stomach suddenly churned like a rising tide. I quickly stood up and rushed to the restroom, vomiting until I had no strength left. When I tried to stand again, my vision went completely dark and I fainted. When I opened my eyes, I was already in the hospital. A crowd of people was gathered. Caleb was sitting beside my bed, holding my hand, a rare look of joy on his face. "Ivy, do you know? You're pregnant. Exactly 45 days. His voice was low and gentle, as if he was afraid of scaring me. For a moment, I felt a little dazed. Caleb rarely had moments of softness. 3 years had passed in a flash, and moments like this had been few. And yet during those same 3 years, the number of times he met with Madison was also extremely small. But every time, he was always gentle and attentive. But that gentleness he gave Madison was simply because she was the one he liked. The gentleness he had occasionally shown me in the past was never because of me. And today, it wasn't for me either. It was for the baby inside my belly. Grandma already knew I was pregnant. Caleb held my hand and smiled warmly. "I've sent someone to pick her up." She was so happy on the phone she cried. Lying on the bed, I suddenly cried too. After 3 years of marriage without getting pregnant, it had become a big problem for my grandmother. But Grandma didn't know the real reason I wasn't pregnant, because Caleb had said he didn't want children yet, that he wanted to enjoy a life with just the two of us. For years, he had been extremely careful with contraception, so why? Why was he so excited now? After the Cole family left, the hospital room grew quiet again. Caleb brought me water. "Don't bring up divorce anymore. Just focus on taking care of yourself and the pregnancy." I pushed the warm cup aside. "I don't want this baby." Caleb's face didn't change at all. He lowered his head slightly, looking down at me from above. "Then you can tell that to your grandmother. If you're willing to let her, at her age, still worry over her granddaughter." Caleb was certain I would give in for the sake of Grandma, that to avoid worrying her, I would continue compromising for the sake of appearances. But he had forgotten something. When my grandmother was young, she had dared to remove her foot-binding cloths and fight back against her parents. She had dared to break off an engagement, run away alone across the country, and support herself. When she discovered her husband was addicted to drugs, she dared to end the marriage and secretly flee with her only daughter. Now she was old, seemingly gentle and frail, never fighting the world. But I knew, if Grandma learned the truth about me and Caleb, she would absolutely support whatever decision I made. Caleb suspended all company matters and began focusing entirely on taking care of me. When I fainted at the anniversary event and the pregnancy was confirmed, the news spread quickly. Reporters and media crowded outside the hospital gates. On the day I was discharged, the Cole family lined up to welcome me. Everyone said I was fortunate, coming from such a background yet marrying into the Cole family, with a caring husband and loving in-laws, and now pregnant. I was, they said, a winner in life. It was laughable. The world judged a woman's success by the advantages a man gave her. No one cared about who she was as a person. No one cared that behind the surface, her life might be a violent storm. Madison has already left Beijing, Caleb said. Your maternal family wants you to come home. In the car, he held my hand. From the start, I told you, between me and Madison, it isn't romantic. We grew up together. When we were young, she once injured her forehead saving me. The scar is still there. As a child, I really did like her, but now I only see her as a younger sister. Ivy, you're really unreasonable, getting upset over something so small. But if it bothers you, I'll be more careful from now on. I won't meet her secretly anymore. And I won't see Madison anymore. I won't go anywhere else either. Caleb gripped my shoulders, trying to pull me into his arms. Let's stop this here. We have a baby now. From now on, the three of us can live well together as a family, okay? To be honest, for a moment back then, I almost believed him. People say that when a woman becomes pregnant, her body releases a hormone that makes her unwilling to harm the tiny life inside her. These last few days, I had been torn, confused, wavering. Grandma had once told me, a husband can belong to someone else, but a child will always be yours. And truly, in that moment, I had wondered if maybe discovering I was pregnant now was heaven giving Caleb and me another chance. No woman wants to kill her own child. I was no exception. But just when I was wavering, Madison found a way to contact me. Do you know why, half a year ago, Caleb suddenly stopped avoiding pregnancy? I froze. It did seem like it started around that time, that Caleb no longer intentionally prevented it. Because that was when I decided to divorce him, I said quietly. You're trying to imply I should have been careful with contraception if I wanted to leave him, aren't you? Madison let out a sudden laugh, sharp and painful. Ivy, I can't get pregnant. If I could, why would Caleb ever have agreed to marry you? So tell me, how do you think your baby ended up being conceived? That child only exists to pave the way for me. It's lucky it even got the chance to come into this world. I wasn't going to tell you, she continued. I planned to wait until the timing was right, until after the baby was born. But Ivy... Her voice twisted with bitter jealousy strong enough to shatter everything. I've changed my mind. I'd rather destroy this path than let you give birth to Caleb's child. I sat there feeling my whole body turn cold. A chill rose from the soles of my feet and spread instantly through every inch of me. I didn't cry. Instead, there was a strange feeling, almost like being unburdened. I could feel it clearly. Every last thread of emotion and attachment I had for Caleb loosened, fell away, disappeared completely. So have you ever considered what happens if I listen to you and insist on having this baby? I asked quietly. You act like you're gentle, tolerant, patient. But in truth, you can't even accept a single grain of sand in your world. I suddenly smiled. Madison, thank you for telling me all this. Ivy, don't hate me, she whispered. I just love him too much. You know, love is always selfish and blind. I didn't answer. I hung up the phone, then walked to the window. In the garden at dusk, almost all the climbing roses had wilted. A breeze swept by, and the last flower on the highest branch fell into the dirt. The flower had fallen. So it was time to wake up from the dream. The night Caleb and I had dinner together for the last time, I wore a light blue dress. He found it familiar. After a moment, he finally remembered when we first met, I had worn something similar. At that time, he and his family had just lost a major internal struggle. Madison, devastated, had married abroad. He had been forced to meet me, some Ivy, because of family arrangements, and he had wanted an excuse to push me away. But he had barely spoken one harsh opening line when my eyes turned red. Caleb had never seen a girl cry so much. My eyes were large, and the tears pooled in them for a long time before finally spilling over. I had choked out, I'm sorry, I really didn't know you were being forced to meet me. I'll go home and tell them to cancel our engagement. I was so ashamed I sobbed uncontrollably from his cruel words, yet I still kept apologizing. Caleb watched me stand up in a panic and knock over the coffee cup. The stain spread across my light blue dress as I lowered my head and wiped it again and again. My tears had fallen drop by drop onto the fabric, and somehow, something in Caleb's heart had quietly shifted. Thinking about a love he could never have, thinking about Madison getting married abroad, he suddenly felt a strange sense of resignation. Your name is Ivy, right? I jolted in surprise and nodded. Yes. Do you want to marry me? I clutched the hem of my dress, pressing my lips together. My long curled lashes drooped down, hiding my red-rimmed eyes. I gave a small, timid nod, my face flushing bright red. Then let's get married. My eyes widened, my entire face was filled with shock. But earlier you? He chuckled, leaning back lazily in his chair, looking at me with amused eyes. The Coles were known for their strong health and vitality, and back then he was still young, still careless, still a little frivolous. When he looked at me with that smile, I became so embarrassed I could hardly breathe. I was just teasing you, Caleb said lightly. Ivy, go home, and don't go tattling to my grandmother either. I shook my head quickly. I won't. I really won't. As soon as I said it, my ears turned red and I didn't dare look at him again. The date ended there. Caleb drove me home. When I got out of the car, he held my hand. 3 months later we were engaged. 7 months later, I married him. And now, 3 years into our marriage, I was carrying his child. A strange feeling rose in Caleb's heart. He should have been happy. The child had arrived exactly according to plan. But the joy he felt now seemed to carry another meaning entirely. These days, he kept thinking, would the baby be a boy or a girl? A boy would be ideal. But if it were a girl who looked like Ivy, that wouldn't be bad either. But why was he hoping the baby would look like me? Originally, his plan had been for the child to call Madison Mother. Caleb faintly sensed things were beginning to slip out of control, but he didn't want to rein them in. Somehow, he wanted to let them spiral. That night's dinner was cooked by me personally. I wasn't nauseous, my mood was good, so he brought me out for some fresh air. I even had a little fruit wine, just a harmless amount for a pregnant woman. Slightly tipsy, I must have looked strangely beautiful to him. You put on a little makeup, your lipstick looks nice. Thank you, I smiled, my eyes curving slightly. He smiled too. Then he stood, walked behind me, and placed both hands on the armrest of my chair, boxing me in. Caleb lowered his head. The bridge of his straight nose brushed against my thick side bangs. I told the housekeeper to move your things back to the master bedroom. I didn't nod, but I didn't shake my head either. I simply raised my glass and clinked it lightly with his. Afterward, he took me on a walk around the garden. The moon was bright, the stars thin, and the ground was covered with a thin layer of dried rose petals. I walked quietly the entire time. Only the early autumn wind rustled the hem of my long dress. Caleb followed behind me. I was a little drunk, and to him, that scene carried the softness of a peaceful memory. Whether I returned to the master bedroom afterward, he couldn't quite recall. He slept deeply, for a long time. When he woke, it was already midday. He instinctively reached out beside him, searching for me. His head throbbed from the hangover as he forced himself to sit up. The room was empty. On the large bed, there was only one pillow. I hadn't slept there the night before. And Caleb didn't yet know it, but not only last night. From this moment on, Ivy would never return to that room again. After the surgery, Grandma was waiting outside to take me home upon discharge. I knew what I had done today would have consequences I would forever regret. But I also knew, stubbornness only brings deeper wounds. I wore a thick coat, but still trembled from the cold. The anesthetic had worn off. A dull ache had begun deep in my abdomen. Grandma pressed a warm water bottle against my stomach and held my hand tightly. Ivy, come home with Grandma. Her back was slightly hunched, her legs unsteady, but her hands were still warm and strong, giving me the courage to move forward. Earlier, she had told someone, "The Cole family doesn't owe anyone anything, Ivy. I understand social status and proper matches better than anyone," Grandma said. Now that things have come to this, I don't blame anyone. I only feel guilty and heartbroken for you. I leaned against her shoulder. If you feel sorry for me, then please make me some egg custard. It's been so long since I've had your egg custard. From now on, Grandma will make it for you every day. I supported Grandma, and Grandma supported me. The midday sun shone down on us, and for the first time in a long while, I felt warm. As we walked to the hospital entrance, we immediately saw Caleb's car. He stepped out, his expression dark, his lips pressed tightly into a straight line. Grandma instinctively moved as if to shield me, but I gently shook my head. Caleb strode toward me and grabbed my shoulders. Ivy, where's the baby? Gone. How dare you? How dare you, Ivy? His fingers tightened on my shoulders. His face had gone pale, almost ashen. Rage and pain churned violently in his eyes. Did it hurt? Did it hurt that much? I pried his fingers off me, one by one. Please sign the divorce papers. Finish the procedures. I will not divorce you. Caleb's voice was low and hoarse, each word grinding out. I was slightly surprised but not moved. Then let's take it to court. If you want to make this even bigger than it already is, go ahead. So much for the so-called polite conversation. It had long turned into a ridiculous joke. I gave him a calm smile. Fine, I don't mind. Caleb seemed ready to say something, but suddenly his phone rang. I faintly heard Madison's name. His expression changed instantly. I know, I'm coming right now. He hung up abruptly. He looked at me. Ivy, wait for me to come back. We'll talk. But I didn't wait for him to come back. I went straight to see Mrs. Cole. I hid nothing. I didn't exaggerate, didn't dramatize. I simply repeated every word Madison had said. Back then, Mrs. Cole had refused to accept Madison because Madison couldn't have children. She had taken on the role of the villain, separating two young lovers, and endured tremendous pressure from the elders to accept me as a daughter-in-law instead. For the past 3 years, she had treated me neither warmly nor coldly, but never harshly. When she learned I was pregnant, she had genuinely been overjoyed. But now that her grandson was gone, even if she resented me, she would resent Madison far more. Madison wanted to rekindle things with Caleb, but she would never pass the barrier of Mrs. Cole. Not in this lifetime. Madison had said something right. I was not a tolerant person. I was selfish. I wanted the man I loved to have only me in his heart and eyes. I also wanted the people who hurt me to never again experience happiness, because when they hurt innocent people, they felt no sorrow, no guilt. Mrs. Cole was a decisive woman. Just as she had once cut apart Madison and Caleb, forcing Madison to marry far away, today she acted again. Caleb and I quickly dissolved our marriage legally. As for Madison, under the ruthless pressure from Mrs. Cole, the Thu family couldn't endure it. They began forcing her to remarry. Rumor had it she had even threatened suicide. Caleb kept vigil by her hospital bed for an entire day and night. It was also said that he was fiercely insisting on marrying her. Mrs. Cole slapped him twice and tried to kick him out of the Cole family. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I left with Grandma and returned to her small town thousands of miles away. I repaired her little courtyard and planned to fill it with climbing roses the following spring. During my postpartum recovery, Caleb suddenly came looking for me. Grandma didn't open the door. He stayed outside for a long time, not leaving until dawn. And early the next morning when I stepped out to get the milk delivery, I saw him again. In the early winter weather, he was wearing only a thin coat in the early winter cold. I, afraid of the cold, was wrapped in Grandma's thick cotton jacket. You see, we were always destined to look like two people who belonged to two different worlds. The neighbors looked at him curiously, slowing down their steps. After all, in a small town like ours, it was rare to see a man both handsome and wealthy looking. But I only gave him one glance before looking away. When I was young, I had been attracted to his appearance, foolishly marrying him without hesitation. But marriage, no matter what, is like a cup of water. Its warmth or coldness is known only to the one drinking it. I had chosen my path, I accepted it, and I acknowledged it. Caleb didn't say anything, but he followed me the entire way. I picked up the milk, bought breakfast, returned home. He trailed behind me all the way until I reached Grandma's gate. Ivy. He finally called my name. I didn't stop. I pushed open the gate, stepped inside, and turned to close it. Caleb took a step forward and blocked the door with his hand. Ivy. In the spring, Madison will get married. I had hardly ever gotten angry at anyone before, not even during arguments. But this time, I suddenly acted. I threw the warm cup of milk straight into Caleb's face. His expensive coat and the cashmere sweater beneath it were immediately stained. He stared at me, stunned, brows knitted tight. Ivy. Caleb, if the man she wants to marry next spring is you, then I would still respect you as a man. But right now, it seems you don't love her that much. Regardless, if you're willing to give up being the Cole heir, you could marry her. But you won't. What I said was only half true. He didn't love Madison that much, but not because he cared about being the heir. The truth was, he hadn't liked her the way he did when he was young for a long time. After I became pregnant, Caleb had actually imagined a good life, a normal, happy family of 3. That ugly thought he once had, he planned to bury it forever. He had once crossed his boundaries out of sympathy for Madison. One night abroad, in a moment of weakness, he made promises to her about children and marriage. He had regretted it for a long time. He never imagined Madison would run to tell me, and I, without hesitation, had given up the baby. The moment he learned the child was gone, Caleb had only one thought. He couldn't keep Ivy. Just like a fallen rose, once it falls, it falls. But in their wedding room, Ivy was everywhere. The servants often said things like, "Madam likes this, Madam prefers that, Madam would know." And Caleb himself, every day at exactly 6, returned home, knowing full well I had long left, yet still hoping the one who came out to greet him would be me. He used to think Ivy was like a cup of warm water, bland, always at the same steady 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Something unimportant. But how can a person live without water? He often thought about our last dinner together, how I had a little fruit wine, how beautiful my lipstick looked that night. He often thought that if we ever took a walk again, he would hold my hand, wrap an arm around my waist, whisper honey softly. Would Ivy soften and give him another chance? He often wondered if that night during the heavy rain he hadn't forgotten to pick me up. If he had appeared in front of me at the right moment, would the ending of our story have changed? But thinking about these things no longer had any, but none of it meant anything anymore. All Caleb could do was tell himself to look forward. Ivy was still single. Ivy had turned down many men who tried to pursue her. Ivy back then had loved him so deeply. Every year he visited her 2 or 3 times, but on the 9th visit, something happened. Something just like before, only this time, he was no longer the man in the story. That day, it rained heavily, just like the day he had forgotten to pick her up. But the male lead this time didn't make the same mistake he once had. In the downpour, the other man's car stopped steadily in the rain. Ivy stood under the eaves trying to stay dry. When she saw the car approaching, she instinctively wanted to run toward it. But the man inside quickly waved his hand, stopping her from coming out into the rain. First, he stepped out of the car by himself, getting completely soaked. Then he ran back to the trunk, grabbed an umbrella, and hurried over to her. The umbrella tilted almost entirely toward her, shielding her, while he guided her into the car first. Truthfully, the car wasn't far, only 3 or 4 steps away. But he couldn't bear to let Ivy be touched by even a drop of rain. Instead, he let himself be drenched as long as she stayed dry. Caleb sat in his own car, stunned, watching the scene unfold. The wipers swept rapidly, but the world outside was nearly swallowed by the storm. The car carrying Ivy sped away, disappearing into the sheets of rain, never to be seen again. Yet the storm from years ago, the one where he forgot Ivy in the rain, seemed to finally crash down on him all at once. Caleb let out a bitter smile and started his engine. The car shot through the wall of rain like an arrow. And in that fleeting moment he seemed to see Ivy again, young, tender, fragile, the way she had been when they first got engaged. His mother had never liked her, but his grandmother had adored her. At their engagement, his grandmother had told her, "Ivy, if Caleb bullies you, come tell Grandma. Grandma will stand up for you." So from then on, every time he teased her until she was embarrassed and flustered, she would always say, "I'm going to tell Grandma." He couldn't help laughing when he remembered it. And he thought of their wedding night, how the pain had made her cry, how he held her to comfort her, how he teasingly said, "Why don't you go tell Grandma now?" How Ivy cried and laughed at the same time, angrily lunging forward to bite him, and how he lowered his head to kiss her, and how she obediently closed her eyes beneath him. Caleb finally understood. Back then, at the very first moment he saw Ivy, he had already liked her. But as people often sigh in regret, flowers always seem to fall before anyone realizes their worth. And when the flowers finally bloom, no one cherishes them anymore. In the 2nd year, after Ivy divorced him, every climbing rose in their wedding room withered and died. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles away, in Grandma's courtyard, the painting walls bloomed spectacularly. But those beautiful flowers no longer belonged to him. Caleb suddenly lifted his face to the sky. He feared that in the overwhelming rain, he would break down and cry. Because Ivy had already begun a new life.